I want to be in your perfect will for my life. If you can use me. And I was just a young girl, 20 years of age in Moonville, South Carolina, if you can believe that.
She told you to put Daystar in your will, not once. Many times, from that desk, on that camera, Joni Lamb looked into your eyes through that television screen and told you that your giving matters, that it goes to the gospel, that God honors the sacrifice of someone faithful enough to include the ministry in their estate plan. You believed her, or someone you love believed her, because why wouldn't you? She was behind that desk every morning. She was in your living room before your first cup of coffee. She was the voice that made it feel like God was real and close and paying attention to what you gave. Now she is dead, and her estate, estimated at approximately $40 million, is sealed inside a private trust that you will never see. Not you, not the donors, not the people who gave faithfully for 10 years, 20 years, 27 years. Not Benita Beth Brock of Sarcoxie, Missouri, who gave to Daystar for 27 years, who wrote to the network expressing concern about how her money had been spent, who asked for a refund, and who received a letter back from Daystar administrator Barbie Harris telling her that Jonathan Lamb, Joni's own son, had taken on a corrupt spirit of greed and power. That letter is a published document reported in full by The Roy's Report, and we will come back to it. Before we go any further, a brief and important note. Everything in this video is drawn from primary source documentation. The core verified reporting comes from the Roy's Report, founded by investigative journalist Julie Roys. Additional sources include the internal Daystar salary document, the final salary review for 2023 DARS, published in redacted form by the Roy's Report in March 2025, Trinity Foundation's investigation into Joni Lamb's property holdings and final year downsizing, Bibb County, Georgia public property records, Texas Family Code statutes, unsealed court documents obtained by the Trinity Foundation, an authenticated July 2023 internal Daystar meeting recording, and published correspondence from Daystar administrators. Where figures come from Trinity Foundation rather than the Roy's Report directly, we will say so. Where legal analysis reflects the application of Texas law rather than confirmed legal action, we will say that too. This story deserves precision. Let us start with what a trust actually does, because most people heard the words Joni Lamb Trust and moved on without asking the next question. A trust is a legal structure that holds assets on behalf of named beneficiaries. When you place your house, your investments, your property inside a trust, those assets no longer pass through probate when you die. Probate is the public legal process where a court oversees the distribution of a dead person's estate. When a will goes through probate, it becomes a public document. Any journalist, any watchdog organization, any donor who wants to know what happened to the assets they helped build can look it up. A trust bypasses all of that. When you die with a properly structured trust, the assets inside pass directly to your named beneficiaries, privately, quietly, without a court filing that anyone can read, without a public record of what you owned or where it went. That is why wealthy people use trusts. Not because there is anything illegal about them, because they do not want you to know what they had or where it went. Joni Lamb used a trust. The Joni Lamb Trust has been confirmed by the Trinity Foundation, which documented its creation during Joni's final year of life. The transfer of her Macon, Georgia home into the trust was verified by Bibb County property records, as reported by Trinity Foundation and confirmed by the Christian Post. According to Trinity Foundation's investigation, Joni sold 3 homes she owned in her final year and placed 4 properties into the Joni Lamb Trust so that assets could be shared after her death without going through probate. The Trinity Foundation identified her total property holdings at the time of their earlier investigation at 7 residential properties across 4 states, valued at approximately $11.7 million. 4 of those properties, including the Macon, Georgia home, were placed in the trust. 3 were sold during the final year. The assets passed to whoever Joni named as beneficiaries the moment she died. Without probate, without a public record, without anyone outside that trust having a legal right to know where they went. Who are the beneficiaries? Nobody outside the family knows. Not the Trinity Foundation, not the Roy's Report, not the donors who gave for 27 years, not the people who were told to put Daystar in their own wills. And one of Joni Lamb's own children does not know either, because he was not told his mother was dying and found out she was gone from the ministry's attorney 10 minutes before they announced it on social media. Let us talk about the children, because this is where the story becomes both complicated and deeply human. Joni Lamb had 3 children with Marcus Lamb. Jonathan, Rachel, and Rebecca, 3 children, 3 very different positions in the final chapter of their mother's life, 3 very different relationships to what she left behind. Jonathan is the eldest, the one Marcus wrote into the succession document, the one Marcus said would lead Daystar after Joni. He is also the one who discovered that his daughter may have been abused and that the situation had been covered up, and who lost everything at Daystar for refusing to be silent about it. According to the internal salary document published by the Roy's report, Jonathan was earning $199,000 as Daystar's vice president in 2022, the third highest salary on the network behind his mother and the CFO. His wife Susie earned $90,000 co-hosting The Green Room. He had been considered, in the words of the Roy's report, the heir apparent to the Daystar dynasty. After refusing to sign a non-disclosure agreement in November 2023, his circumstances at Daystar deteriorated rapidly. He was placed under pressure to leave. A GPS tracker was placed in his company vehicle by Daystar's head of security in October 2023, confirmed by the security team's own expense receipt. His family was followed on residential streets by a private investigator registered to licensed investigator Jamison Bradley Parker, footage of which Jonathan released to the Roy's report in September 2024. His in-laws were removed from the network one by one, and on November 16, 2024, Daystar's head of security arrived at Jonathan and Susie's home on a Saturday, carrying a gun and wearing a bulletproof vest to deliver a termination letter. Jonathan was down the road when his mother died. Nobody from the family called him. He learned she was gone from the attorney. He was seated to the far right of the stage at the Gateway Church Memorial on May 18, 2026, behind a camera, separated from the rest of the family, out of the view of the broadcast. According to the Roy's report's coverage of the memorial, Jonathan was the only Lamb sibling not asked to speak. His name was not mentioned in either of his sister's eulogies. He was not invited to his mother's burial. His face did not appear in the memorial slideshow. President Donald Trump, in his remarks at the memorial, was the first speaker to acknowledge Jonathan at all. And the estate built over 40 years of asking people like you to give is sealed. Jonathan has no publicly confirmed legal claim to any of it, no announced inheritance, no named share of the Joni Lamb Trust, no position at Daystar. Marcus wrote a succession document naming Jonathan as the next president. The board dismissed it in a recorded meeting. And Joni spent her final year ensuring the assets moved through a trust rather than a public will, which means even if Jonathan wanted to challenge the distribution, the legal pathway to doing so is harder because there is no public probate record to contest. She did not just estrange her son while she was alive. She structured her death to make accountability harder for him after it. Rachel Lamb Brown was at her mother's bedside. She is Daystar's Director of Communications, confirmed by the Roy's report's internal salary document as earning $190,000 in 2022, with a 5% increase already proposed for 2023. Her husband, Joshua Brown, earned $100,000 as a Daystar producer, with a 25% increase proposed. Rachel eulogized Joni at the Gateway Church Memorial on May 18th. She did not say Jonathan's name once. She stayed through all of it. When Susie was fired, when Jonathan was tracked, when the NDA was refused, when the GPS tracker was found, when the Roy's report published its investigation, when over 30 ministry partners walked out the door. Through all of it, Rachel stayed, and she was in the room when Joni died. There is a term that has entered the conversation around this story: inheritance grooming. The phrase refers to the deliberate cultivation of a relationship with a person over time, specifically to position yourself as the primary beneficiary of their estate. It is important to be precise here. Nobody can say definitively whether Rachel Lamb Brown was engaged in inheritance grooming. We cannot read her motivations. She may have genuinely believed her mother was right and her brother was wrong. She may have stayed purely out of love and conviction and never thought about the estate at all. But the documented record shows this. Rachel stayed loyal to Joni throughout the family conflict. She sided with Joni when Jonathan and Susie raised their concerns. She remained at Daystar when Jonathan was fired. She did not say his name at the funeral. She was in the room when Joni died. Jonathan was down the road. The trust is sealed. Whatever motivated Rachel's choices, the outcome of those choices is documented fact. Rebecca Lamb Weiss is the youngest, the quietest, the one who has received the least coverage across 2 years of Daystar reporting. She also eulogized her mother and did not say Jonathan's name. Her husband is Jonathan Weiss, a different person from Doug Weiss entirely. And according to the internal Daystar salary document published by the Roy's report, Jonathan Weiss received $185,000 in 2022 for a title that is worth pausing on. His official job description, as recorded in that document, was Israel Liaison, Producer, and Director of Estate Planning. Director of Estate Planning, at a ministry whose founder spent her final year moving properties into a private trust, selling homes, and offloading a private jet. The man holding the estate planning title at Daystar was married to Joni Lamb's youngest daughter, and Joni was actively restructuring her estate while her health declined. Whether Jonathan Weiss had any professional role in the Joni Lamb Trust is not publicly known. The title's existence is confirmed by the Roy's Report's published document. What was done under that title is not public, but you do not get to be surprised that the estate was structured in a way that bypassed probate when the director of estate planning at the ministry is the son-in-law of the woman doing the planning. Now, we need to talk about the person nobody in this conversation is discussing enough, Doug Weiss. He is not one of the children. He is the husband, the surviving spouse, the man Joni married in June 2023. And Texas law has something very specific to say about surviving spouses, something that nobody in the public conversation around this story has fully addressed. Texas is a community property state. This is not a detail. Under Texas Family Code Section 3.002, any property acquired by either spouse during the marriage is presumed to be community property, owned 50% by each spouse, regardless of whose name is on the title, regardless of who earned the money, and regardless of what any private board of directors prefers. Joni and Doug were married from June 2023 to May 2026, 3 years. During those 3 years, any income she received and any assets that came into her possession are legally presumed to be community property under Texas law. Here's what that means in concrete terms. Joni Lamb's salary at Daystar was confirmed by the Roy's Report's internal salary document as $1,048,200 in 2022, the year she assumed sole presidency following Marcus's death. Jonathan Lamb confirmed to the Roy's Report that those 2022 figures were verified and confirmed, not proposed, and that his mother's compensation included Marcus's salary combined with her own, per Marcus's direction upon his death. That salary continued to be paid throughout the marriage, from June 2023 through her death in May 2026. Under Texas community property law, that salary is presumed to be community property. 50% belongs to Doug Weiss. The Miramar Beach, Florida condominium, the beachfront property that Joni and Weiss bought together in September 2023 for $2.9 million, confirmed by the Roy's Report's investigation into Joni's real estate holdings, is presumed to be community property under Texas law, unless it can be demonstrated to have come entirely from separate property sources, such as pre-marriage assets or inheritance. 50% of that property belongs to Doug Weiss. And here is a critical detail that changes the picture significantly. In March 2026, approximately 8 weeks before her death, Joni filed a quit-claim deed removing Doug Weiss from ownership of that Florida condominium, as confirmed by property records and reported by multiple outlets, including Trinity Foundation. That move, removing her husband from a jointly purchased property 8 weeks before she died, raises a question that Texas community property law will not allow to simply disappear. You cannot unilaterally remove a spouse's community property interest through a quit-claim deed. If that property was acquired during the marriage with community property funds, his interest in it does not disappear because of a deed transfer. It may have to be litigated. Under the Texas Estates Code, the surviving spouse cannot be disinherited from their half of community property. No will can override this right. No trust eliminates it. If Joni placed community property assets into the Joni Lamb Trust without Doug's consent, if she attempted to pass his half of community property to her children without his knowledge or agreement, Doug Weiss may have legal grounds to challenge those transfers. He may have legal grounds to claim 50% of every asset Joni acquired during their marriage. Whether he is pursuing that question through attorneys right now, we do not know. What we know is that Texas law gives him a documented pathway, and the people who gave to Daystar for 20 years never knew that the man Joni married might end up with a significant share of what their donations helped build. Now stop for a moment, because we need to talk about where your money actually went, not Daystar's money in the abstract. Your money. The monthly check, the online giving, the estate you were encouraged to redirect toward the ministry after you were gone. Here is the documented record of what your money funded. It funded Joni Lamb's compensation package, which jumped 140% in a single year, from $436,750 in 2021, the year Marcus died, to $1,048,200 in 2022, the year Joni became sole president. That figure comes directly from the internal Daystar salary document, the final salary review for 2023, published in redacted form by the Roy's Report in March 2025. It was more than 3 times the compensation of Daystar's next highest paid employee, CFO Arnold Torres, who received $300,000. For context, Matthew Crouch, president of Trinity Broadcasting Network, the largest Christian television network in the world, received total compensation of $851,724 in 2022, according to TBN's publicly filed Form 990. Daystar does not file a Form 990. It classifies as a church with the IRS, which means you will never know from a public document what its highest paid executives earn. You only know Joni's salary because her son provided the internal document to the Roy's report and then lost his job, in part because of it. Your money funded the entire Lamb family's compensation. According to the Roy's report's analysis of that same internal document, Joni, her children, and their spouses were paid nearly $2 million combined by Daystar in 2022. Jonathan at $199,000, Susie at $90,000, Rachel at $190,000, Joshua Brown at $100,000, Rebecca at $100,000, Jonathan Weiss, Director of Estate Planning, at $185,000, and Doug Weiss, per Jonathan Lamb's account to the Roy's report, began receiving a six-figure consulting salary from Daystar as soon as he and Joni married under the title of consultant. Jonathan also told the Roy's report that in 2023, when he asked for access to salary information in the new payroll software, the HR staff member told him he could view anyone's salary except Joni's and Doug Weiss's, per Joni's strict personal instructions. Your money funded the 7 homes. Trinity Foundation confirmed 7 residential properties held by Joni Lamb across 4 states, valued at approximately $11.7 million at the time of their investigation. The Roy's report also independently reported this real estate portfolio. Several properties were reportedly purchased following Marcus's death. The Miramar Beach condo, purchased with Doug Weiss in September 2023 for $2.9 million, may have been acquired with funds from Marcus's life insurance policy, per Trinity Foundation's analysis, a policy that donor premiums may have partially funded. Your money funded the Gulfstream GV private jet, tail number N279PH. Daystar acquired it in 2020, shortly after receiving $3.9 million in federal Paycheck Protection Program loans designed to retain employees during the COVID-19 pandemic. Daystar later repaid the PPP loan after Inside Edition, working with Trinity Foundation, confronted Marcus Lamb in a parking lot ambush interview about the purchase. Trinity Foundation subsequently tracked the jet's flight patterns and, in its analysis of flights between October 2022 and May 2024, identified 24 round trips between Fort Worth and Colorado Springs, where Doug Weiss is based, and 13 round trips to Destin, Florida, where the Miramar Beach condo was located. Trinity Foundation estimated the total cost of those flights at approximately $769,220. The jet was sold during Joni's final year. Trinity Foundation confirmed its last recorded flight was to San Diego, a city approximately 25 minutes from an alternative cancer treatment clinic in Tijuana, Mexico, where multiple sources have reported Joni received treatment in her final days. Daystar has not publicly disclosed the cause of Joni's death. It publicly described her condition only as involving serious health matters and a back injury before her passing. Your money funded the $103,818 honeymoon at Las Ventanas al Paraíso in Los Cabos, Mexico, charged to Joni Lamb's Daystar corporate credit card, confirmed by 2 separate expense reports published by the Roy's report. When Jonathan objected to the charge at an August 2023 board meeting, board member Tom Callender reportedly decided to gift the approximately $100,000 to Joni from ministry funds, according to Jonathan's account to the Roy's report. Joni later denied the charges publicly, claiming she paid with credit card points and personal funds. The Roy's report requested documentation of any reimbursement twice. Daystar did not provide any. On an authenticated audio recording from a September 2023 internal meeting, Jonathan is heard saying directly to Callender, CFO Torres, and Attorney Lynch, "I didn't agree that Daystar paid your $100,000 honeymoon." Nobody on that recording disputes the claim. Your money funded the GPS tracker, the private investigator, and the armed security guard. The GPS tracker was placed in Jonathan Lamb's company vehicle by Daystar's head of security, Shannon Kelly, in October 2023, confirmed by the expense receipt dated October 2023, not 2021, as Joni's office later claimed when confronted. The private investigator followed Jonathan and Susie Lamb and their family on residential streets in September 2024, footage of which Jonathan provided to the Roy's report. The security guard arrived at their home on a Saturday morning in November 2024, carrying a gun and wearing a bulletproof vest to deliver a termination letter. And your money funded the institutional infrastructure that, When Benita Beth Brock wrote to ask for a refund of 27 years of giving, responded not with transparency, but with a letter from Barbie Harris, calling Jonathan a man who had taken on a corrupt spirit of greed and power, a man who twists any truth just to destroy and slander his own mother and even his deceased father. That letter is published in full by the Roy's Report. Benita Beth Brock of Sarcoxie, Missouri had written, simply and devastatingly, those funds were given in a godly manner in which they were not used. Donors' money is not your money to pay off people to keep their silence. Daystar did not return a cent. Attorney Christine Jones, a board member of the Roy's Report, told the publication that spending on mansions, expensive vacations, private planes, and lavish lifestyles raises serious questions about whether those expenditures are consistent with Daystar's stated charitable mission. Importantly, she said, even if the spending is technically within the law, there remains a serious question about whether a religious nonprofit organized as a church should be diverting millions of dollars from ministry efforts to support the lavish lifestyle of the president and her family members. And then there was the funeral itself. Daystar hired Pastor Jentizen Franklin to deliver the eulogy at Gateway Church in Dallas on May 18, 2026, a service that was broadcast to Daystar's audience. Julie Roys of the Roy's Report, writing and speaking in the days following, described Franklin's message as one of the worst cases of spiritual abuse she had ever witnessed. Franklin told the audience that Joni was appointed by God to lead Daystar and that anyone who criticized her work was standing against God. He proclaimed that if someone is touching the world, preaching Jesus in the city, preaching Jesus to the streets, preaching Jesus to the nations, then criticism of that person is the smallest act imaginable. He declared that God personally told him to deliver this message at Joni's funeral. Royce noted that in the context of that service, where Jonathan was seated behind a camera away from the rest of the family, not invited to speak, not invited to the burial, not named by either sister, the target of Franklin's remarks was unmistakable. It was Jonathan and Susie. Their names were never said. They did not need to be. The day after the service, Jonathan posted publicly about his mother. He wrote about her cleaning his college dorm room, about Tetris on the couch, about long Scrabble games she usually won, about her love for the Lord, about looking forward to seeing her and Marcus again in heaven one day. He said simply, "I love you, Mom." That post was not addressed to cameras. It was not performance. It was a man doing something most people could not do after what had been done to him. Now let us talk about what Jonathan can actually do, because that is the question every person following this story is asking. The first possible legal path involves the community property issue. If Jonathan can demonstrate that the Joni Lamb Trust contains community property assets belonging partly to Doug Weiss, and that those assets should therefore be subject to a different legal process before being distributed to trust beneficiaries, there may be grounds to challenge the trust's distribution in those specific areas. But this requires Jonathan to essentially align his legal interests with Doug Weiss's in order to access assets he cannot otherwise reach. That is not a comfortable legal strategy. It is, however, a real one under Texas law. The second possible path involves Marcus's estate, probated in 2021. If Marcus's personal estate planning contained provisions for Jonathan separate from the corporate succession question at Daystar, Jonathan may have rights that predate the Joni Lamb Trust entirely. Those records are not publicly available. The third path, and perhaps the most lasting, is the one Jonathan and Susie have already begun walking. They launched a new ministry of their own, confirmed by reporting in 2025 and 2026, built from the ground up, not subject to any board vote or NDA or trust structure or funeral seating arrangement. And what Jonathan built in going public, the authenticated recordings, the published documents, the investigation he triggered that is permanently in the public record, that cannot be taken back. Daystar cannot suppress it. The Roy's Report cannot unwrite it. Whatever legal or financial justice Jonathan ultimately receives or does not receive, the documented truth of what happened at Daystar is already built. But let us come back to where this story actually started, because the most important document in this entire situation is not the Joni Lamb Trust. It is not Marcus's succession letter. It is not the internal salary document or the property records or the Gulfstream flight logs. It is the Daystar Legacy Stewardship page, the page that told you to put Daystar in your will. The page that listed, among its stated reasons for estate planning, ensure your property is transferred to the persons of your choosing, not the state's. Prevent persons from receiving any of your assets. Make charitable contributions. Maintain privacy. That page was written for you. It was deployed in Ministry Now segments, in Joni's Table Talk episodes, in partnership appeals, across every platform Daystar used to ask for money, and encourage you to include the ministry in your final financial plans.